Welcome to the Queens Rising podcast, the show where we dive into the unspoken, the untold, and the unapologetically real stories of women everywhere.
We are here to shine a light on life's toughest struggles, the ones no one talks about but everyone faces.
This is your safe space, your community, and your voice. Let's get real together.
So in this episode, we're going to continue our discussion on boundaries. This is such a deep and rich topic, lots to unpack, and so we want to give it the time that it deserves. Today, we're going to introduce, once again, the book Boundary Boss. It has lots of good information, and we want to dive into a little bit of it today. We've touched on already the emotional landscape of boundaries. Just why it feels unsafe, why it feels scary, why it feels like we're going to lose when we set a boundary, right? We talked about all of that. We've talked about why we avoid those boundaries. We avoid discomfort. We avoid the unfamiliar. We avoid things that make us feel like we're going to lose. So now today we're going to kind of dive into the more actionable steps that we can take to assess our discomfort, assess these patterns of behavior that are familiar but unhealthy, and then what steps that we can take to actually make a difference. So what have you experienced this week that has kind of brought this to life?
I feel like we're all recently, we just talked about this, we're all recently having to implement boundaries.
Yes.
But I think because we're, like I said, we're in this journey together, we're able to recognize when we're around people that we probably would have to set too many boundaries with, makes us feel too uncomfortable, and we're like, you know what?
It's too much here.
It's too much. A little too much.
Yeah.
But because we're on this journey together, we're reading our books, we're doing shadow work, going through therapy, keeping each other accountable, we're able to recognize. So I think we should talk about some of the discussions we've had lately.
Yeah, so we were just saying earlier how things have been bubbling up. And I was like, there's something in the air. There's something in the energy.
Retrograde.
Yes, no, but
It's done though. Yeah.
All of a sudden, people have a bunch of audacity.
Yes.
So much audacity everywhere.
The disrespect.
Yeah, but I think it's what you're saying. We are being more self-aware of and paying more attention to that. So the red flags are there, right?
Yeah.
And we have to listen to them.
Right.
Because when we don't, is when we have these situations that we could have avoided.
Yes.
You know, if we had listened to our intuition.
And that makes a little bit more sense than something simply being in the air and audacity being at an all-time high.
I feel
right?
like it's in the air. It's very thick.
It's very thick, very in the air. So, and this invades both personal and professional relationships, right? We've had instances of both in each of our respective lives. And sometimes it feels like in your professional world, you might be insulated by policies that you have in place or the company that you work for or whatever. You're like, I'm safe here because we're good. But that's not actually the case, right? We have, especially in the real estate industry, which we're all in, we have this hustle mentality, this grind mentality. And if you're not on your constant hustle and grind, if you're not people pleasing, if you're not, out there getting it every day, then who even are you, right? Yeah. And you've experienced some dips as you've stepped away to have a whole baby. A big deal.
Yeah,
you
right.
just created a whole ass little
No
kid.
problem. Just right out. Yeah.
But you made the choice to step back from this flourishing and established real estate career that was producing residual income for you, and in some very real ways, kind of giving you a sense of worth, a sense of value, right?
Right.
And so the question always becomes, when you step back or when you're not living up to that hustle mentality, well, who even am I? What is my value?
I definitely
here?
went through that. Definitely. Right? And just to be real, it almost defined who I was. Well, it did. It defined who I was.
Right.
The grit, I think the grit would be a glimmer. The words boss babe or hustle and I actually had to remove all of those words associated. Like in my office, I changed my office from an office to a den, a yoga den. Yep. Like I literally had to remove myself from that world in order to be able to be more authentic to who I was. And that does mean setting boundaries. I had to step down from Rise, and that was hard for me. I had to let go of the team that I had and set boundaries like I'm not available. Here's a resource, or just unfortunately not respond. Because I just had to do the things that is going to make me and bring me peace where I was. I wasn't in the real estate industry anymore, and that had created who I was for a long, long time.
Right. You
And so-
self-define based on your accolades and your accomplishments.
All about the accolades and accomplishments. So when you do those things, it is a scary thing to do, but if you're looking for finding peace, you have to do actionable items. You have to do things that are going to separate yourself or put that very firm boundary that we don't talk about in the real estate, especially in real estate, because it's like you don't have a turn-off switch for real estate.
Right.
And it's like you're always on. I know as a lender, realtors want you over the weekends.
Yes.
Victoria, for you, you don't work on the weekends, which I'm like,
That wasn't always the case, though.
Yeah.
yeah,
That
but
was
that's
not always
amazing
the
that you're
case.
there now.
Well, so let's clarify that. I don't take clients on the weekends.
Very true. Thank you for clarifying that, because you still work.
I work my ass off on the weekends.
It doesn't stop on Friday.
It does not stop. And as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as people who work within the real estate world, people can sometimes treat it like we're out here saving lives, right? Like somebody's dying and you need
Well, we
to
were
answer now.
essential workers during COVID.
Right. And I think that in large part, the real estate community has bought into the idea that we are in fact essential, and that lives are going to perish if we're not like on the grind all the time. And we've talked in previous episodes about people feeling free to contact you at any time of the day or night, irrespective of sleep or peace or family or anything like that. And the general consensus that I've experienced is basically you ain't shit unless you're always on your grind.
Yeah, there's this 24/7 mentality that a lot of realtors or lenders even voice it and put it as their slogan or put it as their, it's
I'm always
like
available.
I'm always
here
available.
for you.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's
And
not-
vacation is just working remotely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think yes, there's emergencies that we have to
Sure.
attend to, yes, but not have that mindset that we have to be on 24/7. Who wants to also work with somebody that's available all the time? How much work are you really doing? How much
For real?
knowledge do you really
Let's
have?
talk about that,
If
yeah.
you're available 24/7, that is not
Because
to
it's
me, that's not-
we know it's draining us.
Yeah.
I can't be present for family or for business partners if I am always on. How are we filling ourselves up? And I think that's what we need to talk about is the actionable steps. What are the physical, emotional, mental things that you do to create a space of being able to set a boundary?
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's any coincidence that, divorce rates are high in this world. Cheating rates are high. Burnout is high. We've had people in our community take their own lives and pass away in untimely ways due to stroke or heart attack or having their immune system be compromised in one way or another. It's quite literally killing us.
Absolutely, it is.
And statistically, what we've seen is that while it used to be historically that men had the higher heart attack rates due to higher cortisol levels, due to higher participation in the work field, now we're seeing women catch up to them.
Yeah.
And women are having heart attacks at close to the same rate due to the same reasons. And so we know that heightened levels of cortisol in our systems lead to higher incidences of heart attack, stroke, immune issues, all of those things. So
cortisol is stress.
yes, it's your stress hormone. It's
stress.
what is released when you are engaged in a fight or flight situation. And so long term, it causes inflammation, it causes disease, it causes even things like cancer and
Definitely believe
those
that,
types of things. So, this is not like, oh my God, I just can't handle the stress. This is literally, our bodies were not made to constantly be in
Yes.
fight or flight.
Yeah.
Our bodies were made to be in fight or flight during a crisis
Right.
when we needed to save our lives.
And every day doesn't have to be a crisis.
Right.
Yeah.
But then we were designed to go back to homeostasis, which is a baseline of, okay, we're cool. All systems down to normal. And so for those of us who haven't learned to balance that, we're in this constant state of like urgency,
Anxiety.
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 Yes. And so how many people do we know just in our own circles who are dealing with anxiety, depression,
Yeah.
even things like ADHD and, you
Autoimmune.
know, autoimmune diseases, that
Yeah.
it's pervasive.
Yeah.
Is truly pervasive, and we're in a position where I think that we can bring some awareness both in our own lives, but also, you know, help other people be aware and maybe restructure what hustle mentality looks like.
I know you have a book that you've been reading.
Yes.
That I haven't started reading, but just by what you've read to us so far, it's powerful.
So one of the things that truly spoke to me, well, actually, it was the introduction here. So this spoke to me, and I was like, "How dare you speak about my life?" So this was the very first paragraph, and it reads as follows: "Did you ever say yes when you wanted to say no? Do you prioritize other people's needs or desires above your own? Do you often feel like you should be doing more in all areas of your life? Are you overly invested in the decisions, feelings, and outcomes of the people that you love? Are you so resistant to asking for help that you end up doing most things yourself?"
Oh, wow.
And so for each of these things, I was like, how dare you?
You
How
don't
did
know me like that.
You don't know me.
You.
So she has at the beginning of this book this Boundary Boss Bill of Rights. Now, I like alliteration, but part of this was a little bit cheesy to me. But then when I started reading it, I was like, wait, you can do this? So you have the right to say no or yes to others without feeling guilty. You have the right to make mistakes and course correct or change your mind.
I like that. Change your mind. You have the right
You
to
have the right to change your mind.
Yeah.
You have the right to negotiate for your preferences, desires, and needs.
Oh.
You have the right to express and honor all of your feelings if you so choose. You have the right to voice your opinion even if others disagree. You have the right to be treated with respect, consideration, and care. You have the right to determine who has the privilege of being in your life. That one
Okay.
was big to me.
Okay,
The
and we've been talking
privilege.
about that. Like, you
Right.
don't have that privilege
Yes.
anymore, homie.
Yes.
So,
Nobody's specific. You have the right to communicate your boundaries, limits, and deal breakers. You have the right to prioritize your self-care without feeling selfish.
that
Yeah.
part.
Big one. to
That
me.
part, because also in our industry or in our heritage, however you want to say it, that's a huge thing. We've talked about it before, especially in the Hispanic culture. You take
Right.
care of everyone else before you take care of yourself.
And if not, you're
Yes.
selfish. You're not a real
Yes.
woman. You're not a keeper. You're not wife material. You're not a good mom. You're not. You know, there's
All those
so much.
words that I hate.
Right? This last one, though, I feel like I need this on a T-shirt. You have the right to talk true, be seen, and live free.
No. Dang.
I kind of want to cry. Like, what?
A little bit, yeah. Got you. Got you. Yeah.
All of these, you have the right. Now, I don't know about you, but as a child, I did not, in fact, have those rights. I had no rights at all. You talk when you're spoken to.
And
You
that's it.
behave, you be good. And, you know, we talked about this last time. It's so deeply ingrained in me that it's not even something that I think twice about. Have you experienced
Yes. Well, I think that the way we're brought up, like my family, my particular family, is like you were saying. It was my grandma did everything and she was did not want any help because only she did things perfectly. And she was the one who did all of the housework and all the things. She could have afforded a maid, but they wouldn't because she did things perfectly. So
Yes.
how that's like when I think back, it's something that unconsciously, it's very hard for me to ask for help. Very hard for me. Like, I've reached out to you guys after years,
Yeah.
Yes.
of saying, I need help.
And when you finally do, we're like, of course. Yes, absolutely.
I know,
Yes.
and that was one thing that I had a lot of things to work through to be able to just say I'm not okay.
Can you talk more on that? Because we've talked about how it's the standard, right?
Yeah.
But how did it make you feel to say or to ask? Because honestly, asking for help is setting a boundary.
Yeah.
Talk more about that. Like, how did that feel? What was the fear behind it, and then what was the positive outcome? What was your fear of asking for help?
My fear was showing vulnerability, being vulnerable and saying I can't do it on my own. It was like admitting something that I thought I could do, and all this time, and my husband tells me, because you never say anything, you never say when you need help, you're never vocal about it, and I guess I just don't want to be a bother to people. I just want people just to be okay with me. I don't know, but when I did finally open up, I cried with her. I cried so much because it just felt like, oh, okay, they see me. They still love me even though I'm not perfect. They still, care about me, even though I'm not this perfect little thing.
So
It's
by
like
you saying
perfection.
that they still love me, did you feel somewhere, because of what you were taught, that if you asked for help, that you weren't worthy of love?
Yeah.
You weren't accepted?
Yeah.
So
it's like, because there's such strong characters in my family, the women especially, that they did it all. They were like, what is the word? Without being a bad word.
say it in Spanish.
Chingonas.
Okay. Got it.
Yes. So anyway, so I being perfect and being able to handle it myself, then I was less. Because they
You're
were
not
able
living
to
up to the established standard.
Yes. So that was hard.
It comes from somewhere along the lines, we have been taught what we deserve, what we are worthy
And
of.
what is lovable, what is worthy. You are only lovable and you are only worthy if you meet the standard.
Yeah.
And I think if
And
we
you have to wonder if that's what's behind your grandma. My mother,
Yeah.
she thinks there is a particular right way to
Live and
warm
do
up
it. Yeah. Oh.
leftovers in the microwave. There's a right way to do everything, and
Yeah.
that right way is her way. And it seems that if you question that right way, it's like an existential crisis to her. Like she can't. There are these 3 questions. This author calls them the 3 Qs. And they're questions to ask yourself when you're up against this. Because I think when we're up against a boundary violation, we have some very visceral reactions. And they're not reactions that we necessarily take the time to put words to or anything, but it's worth, I think this is a good first step in establishing a boundary. So the first question that you can ask yourself when you're in the heat of things is, who does this person remind me of? Because very often the people that we're dealing with, they're kind of reflective of somebody that we've dealt with before, somebody who taught us that we don't have rights or we don't have.
More than likely somebody we grew up with.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
And so the second question is, where have I felt like this before? So sometimes, often in my case, I'm like, I remember the day when I was 8 years old. It's
time
usually
at band camp.
Yes, this one time at band camp. It's usually child me, right?
Yes.
Now, if you think about child you didn't have power. You didn't have, you didn't have the right to stand up for yourself. And so we're receiving this behavior from somebody else from the powerless standpoint of a child. Not taking into account, hey, I'm a grown-ass lady, actually. Ms. Jackson, if you nasty. Now, the third question is, how is this behavioral dynamic familiar to me? How is this the devil that you know? Right?
Because we repeat patterns.
We repeat patterns. We understand how to operate within this framework, whether it's healthy or not. We understand this. Have you ever felt like, I must have stupid tattooed on my forehead.
Yeah.
Or I must have a note on my back saying take advantage of me.
Yeah.
Because I'll take it. Why is that?
Yeah.
Because the energy that we're putting out, the
The energy
behavior
that
that
we're
we're
putting out is what
accepting
we're gonna
is
receive.
attracting. I always say givers attract takers.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more to unpack here. We're going to get into the professional side of things, and I think that that's equally important. But
What's the name of this book?
I love this. This book is called Boundary Boss by Terry Cole. My friend and sister Africa sent this to me, and I have been loving it as I've been diving in. I've also been kind of hating it, if I'm being honest.
Because I'm
Good
glad you
idea.
said that because it's not going to feel good.
No,
but
this
that's
doesn't.
okay. We still have to face it. A lot of things
Yes.
in life, even though it doesn't feel good, the results are going
Yeah.
to be good.
Exactly.
Not everything is, rainbows and lollipops.
And that's why I think most people avoid it. They don't want to go through the suck. They don't want to go through the ugly part of it.
Right.
So, but
But
that's the
we
only
know
way.
we can do hard things.
Yes.
But
We've been
grit,
through-
like
yes.
oysters. How are oysters made?
Oh, I didn't bring mine today.
Well, we're going to expand more on this. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us your thoughts.